Paul Michael Lemaitre was a 66-year-old man who was an employee at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson of Alaska. He assisted soldiers who were leaving the military with their resume. Paul was a fit man and was registered to run the Mount Marathon in Seward, Alaska. This race is one of the oldest races in the world and it has never had any fatalities or a missing case before until July 4, 2012. This race starts in downtown Seward, Alaska and continues up the mountain to the summit and then back down. The Seward Chamber of Commerce website states minor injuries are common but major injuries or disappearances are not. The whole race length is 3.1 to 3.5 miles. The race is limited to a certain number of people that are chosen through lotteries and competitive activities. On July 4, 2012, Paul was ready to run the race. He had family members at the start line and the race started at 3 p.m. Paul's goal wasn't to become the first person to finish the race, although that would be a bonus. His goal was to prove to himself he can finish the race in a timely manner. The year before, the fastest time was 1 hour and 11 minutes, which was done by a 72-year-old man. As the race was taking place, few unusual events happened. There were two different incidents where runners fell in a steep section of the course and were seriously injured. Paul was wearing a black shirt and short and wasn't wearing any glasses on the day of the race. According to the Chambero race timing crew who was stationed at the top of the mountain, it seemed that Paul was the last person in the race. The race crew began his descent about 5:45 p.m. He spoke with Paul at 6 p.m. and he confirmed he would want to continue the run. He said Paul looked good and didn't show any physical or mental problems. He said Paul was moving slowly and steadily up the mountain. At 6 p.m., officials talked to Paul's wife and explained he was seen and was fine. They said if he wasn't down in 90 minutes, she should contact the authorities, but they thought he was fine. At 8 p.m., Paul's wife contacted the race officials and let them know Paul had not returned. Officials contacted Alaska's state troopers and a search was started. As soon as searchers started their effort, a fog hit the area which made it hard to see far away. Ground searchers saw 2 black bears which ran away and not any grizzly bears. There was a dusting of snow close to the summit the night that Paul disappeared. Searchers looked for tracks but found none. Alaska state troopers used FLIR and found no evidence of Paul. Hundreds of volunteers kept searching for him with no results. There were dog teams in the area as well and they didn't find any trace neither. All the trails in this race are well marked and there is no way you get lost as an adult. A 4.5-day search was terminated after not finding a single trace of Paul. Searchers even searched the backside of the mountain in case Paul got completely disoriented and ended up there, but they found nothing. Paul was never found and eventually he was formally announced dead from exposure. On September 19, 2004, 49-year-old Robert Springfield went elk hunting with his 13-year-old son Colton and his adopted son Brent. The hunting location was in Bighorn Mountains in Montana, United States. This location is known for its big games. The Crow Indian Reservation is also located in this area. Robert was wearing a thick, heavy coat because of the weather. He was also armed with a bow and arrows. The 2 kids were helping their dad by trying to lead the elks down the valley. It's worth mentioning Robert and his family were members of the Crow Indian Reservation and they were hunting on a ground owned by the tribe. In the afternoon of September 19th, Robert's two sons were waiting for their dad to show up to the pre-arranged spot where they agreed to meet up. But Robert never showed up. The two sons waited until dark, and after not seeing their dad, they notified authorities and a search was started. They searched the area but found no trace of Robert. They also brought in flare-equipped helicopters to do some low flyovers which amounted to nothing. The area had many steep canyons with many caves. There were search dog teams in the area as well, but they couldn't find the scent. In October of 2005, almost a year after Robert went missing, a hunter was in the area that Robert was lost and heard a crow screeching. The hunter got close to the sound and saw remains of a human. There was a partial skull, a femur, and a neatly rolled up man's belt next to the skull. There was also two boots neatly sitting beside the belt. He also saw a wallet which still had money in it, and a man's coat with a small tear in the back. The county sheriff came to the scene and decided FBI should get involved. The FBI took possession of the remains, and after investigation it was confirmed the remains and clothes belonged to Robert Springfield. FBI gave conflicting information about Robert's cause of death. At first they said he was killed by a bullet, but later they recanted and said a tree might have fallen on him. The spot they found the remains was directly above the camp where much of the search was being done a year before. 2 years after finding Robert's remains, FBI still had the possession of the remains. They claimed they had to put Robert's DNA in a federal database and they couldn't ship the remains until it was completed. The family filed a lawsuit regarding getting the body back. Remember, his belt and boots were neatly rolled up beside his remains. Who did that? How Robert died in Bighorn Mountains of Montana remains a mystery to this day. "36-year-old Toivo Rainakainen was an employee of the Great West Timber Company who worked at a remote timber camp north of Marathon, Ontario in September of 1984. He worked and slept in the camp for the duration of the work. Last time Toivo was seen was in the early hours of September 26th. The only road that goes to the camp is Dead Horse Road, which is very rough and remote. There was no report of unusual activities in the day Toivo disappeared. In a strange turn of events, 100 miles east of the camp where Toivo disappeared, another worker with the name of Aju Chokvobader disappeared from another timber camp. Neither of the individuals were ever found.